I believe that sometimes the universe has us detach to healthily reattach, meaning that we kind of have to pull back from some of our relationships to come back into relationship with ourselves, like learn how to have a trusting relationship with ourselves. So then we can start letting the right people in, that we can trust ourselves to be able to trust other people. And that was my experience in this work. So I just wanted to say as a disclaimer, if you do not have anyone in here, it's okay. Remember, this is a starting point. I'm not here to like burst the bubble of denial in your life, but I do believe that reality will find us some way, somehow. Like I said before in a previous episode, like it keeps knocking. That lesson will keep knocking until you learn it. So like always, I think if you are here today listening, there's a reason. And that reason is that it's time to look at your relationships from a place of reality and find a way to be empowered and safe in your relationships. Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together. Hello, and welcome back to Grow with Robin Breckenridge. I am back from my retreat. Last time I talked to you guys, I literally ran out the door and hopped on a flight to Nashville, Tennessee, in this beautiful, beautiful house, kind of about a half hour outside of Nashville on the Harpeth River, where I literally watched magic happen. I watched 6 amazing people come together and do just, the most profound work that anyone could ever witness. And I'm pretty confident that I might have the best job on the planet, or at least the best job on the planet for me. So I'm very grateful from that experience. And I'm really excited to hop back in and go a little bit deeper on the conversation that we started last week. And last week, I introduced you guys to the system of boundaries that I teach called the Boundary Pyramid, which is really a big picture framework to help you navigate emotional access and protect your peace in your relationships. But this week, we're going to zoom in a little bit, because what I've seen again and again in my own life and in the lives of so many clients is that most of the exhaustion, confusion, hurt, and disconnection doesn't happen on the outside edges of our relationships, meaning it doesn't happen in the relationships where there's not a lot of closeness. It happens in the inner space, the closest relationships we have. And that's when we give someone sacred or trust access who hasn't earned it, or when we deeply hope someone is safe, but the data and the reality doesn't align. So today we're going to go a little deeper into the categories. We're going to talk about what it feels like to live inside the sacred and trust categories, where your most vulnerable, expansive relationships belong, and how to discern who truly fits there. So when you have clear, grounded expectations of people, you experience more peace, more clarity, and less emotional reactivity in your relationships. It's definitely not about lowering your expectations. It's about aligning them with what people have shown you they're capable of. So you guys have heard me use the term data a lot. I think that it's just a really concrete way of saying like, hey, I need to be collecting data of how I feel and how people behave in my life so that I can use that data, which is another word for discernment, good judgment, to keep myself safe. Because ultimately, it's our job to keep us safe. So the sacred and trust categories, which are the two that I'm going to cover today, because I'm going to break these apart so that you really deeply understand these different categories. Sacred and trust are the most emotionally open parts of this pyramid. They're where your nervous system should feel most at ease. But without discernment, these categories can become draining instead of safe. And most of us don't consciously place people in categories before we learn a system like this. But we feel it when someone isn't meeting us in the way that we need. So naming where someone belongs based on consistent behaviors brings relief and clarity. I can't tell you how many times I myself or have seen someone that I've coached or known try to fit someone into a category they don't belong in. And I'll tell you what, it's not pretty and it doesn't feel good. So let's start with the sacred category. And the sacred category really, it's your emotional sanctuaries in this work. These relationships are marked by unconditional love, unwavering safety, and total acceptance. So really, the sacred category is reserved for relationships in which you feel unconditionally loved and safe. That means 100% of the time. So here are some examples of who might best be placed in this category. God or higher power. Again, if this does not resonate with you, take what you want, leave the rest. Call it God, call it infinite intelligence, call it Buddha, call it your higher self. I don't care. Whatever floats your boat. But this is a relationship, again, in which you feel unconditionally loved and safe. If you have a spiritual connection, sacred is a great place to put it. Nature. It is not uncommon that I have people that come to this work with religious trauma. And maybe they need to repair their relationship with a higher power. Maybe they don't have one. Maybe it doesn't resonate. So a lot of times people will put nature in their sacred category because that's a place where they feel held and safe. Pets. I mentioned this in the last episode. I just lost my dog 2 weeks ago. And when she was in her physical body, was a relationship that was sacred for me and totally fit into this category. And now that she's not in her physical body, her spirit and soul is something I still connect to. So my dog Palmer was in sacred when we were in a physical relationship together. And now in spirit, she's also in sacred, which is a great lead in to the next example. I believe you can put loved ones who have passed away in this category. And I have a really amazing story. I had a client years and years and years ago who unfortunately had lost her daughter when she was a baby. And one of the things that came up a lot in our work was around her not feeling supported in her grief around the death of her child. And her husband didn't grieve the same way she did. And she had had 2 children after her daughter had passed away. So these children didn't even know that child. So they also weren't grieving in the same way she did. So when an anniversary of the child's death or a birthday would come around, she would feel very isolated and alone in her grief. And it really kind of made the grief even more intense. So we just so happened to be going through this, the work around the boundary pyramid at this time. And I believe it was coming up on the 10th anniversary of her baby daughter's passing. And so I said, what if we put your daughter in the list? Because when I work with clients, I'll have them pick 20 people in their life and then we put them into a category. And she said, well, she's dead. And I said, okay, well, do you ever talk to her, in spirit? And she said, well, no, she was a baby. Like, what am I going to talk to her about? And when we discussed the sacred category, one of the qualities in this category is that this is someone that would know everything about you. And she said, well, she didn't know everything about me. She was a baby. And so we had a conversation just from an open-minded perspective, because I never would push my spiritual beliefs on anyone, nor do I really know anything for sure. I just know what resonates with me. So I said, well, what if she is with a higher level of consciousness now? Call it God, call it the universe. And you could talk to her. You could talk to her, maybe in a way that you wouldn't talk to a baby. Anyway, she had a lot of resistance around it. And I think she was like, I don't really know. But anyways, I said, just think about it. And somewhere between the last time we had a session and the next time, the 10th anniversary had come and gone. And we had a session after. And she said, I thought about what you said, and I would like to put my daughter in the sacred category. And I was a little bit surprised because she had some pretty decent resistance around it. And I said, okay, tell me more about it. And she said, well, it was the 10th anniversary of her passing. And instead of feeling victimized by the way that my husband was dealing with it and my other children, I decided to go out and sit by my favorite tree on my property. And I just started talking to her. And she had happy tears running down her face. And she said it felt so good to connect with her. And I could tell her anything. And I did feel her energy around me. So that's an example. Of course, that doesn't have to be true for you. But in my experience, love transcends space and time. You can tap into the love that you've had for someone that maybe passed 10, 20, 30 years before, and the exact same amount that you did the last time you saw that person physically. So I do believe that maybe, some of us had maybe grandparents that had a special relationship with us or a sacred relationship. And now that they are in spirit and maybe aligned with a higher level of consciousness, we can maintain a connection with them. So I highly suggest that if you have someone like that in your life, that is someone that their presence, their energy can always be available. You can call on them. You can tell them anything about you without judgment, and have a very sacred relationship and continuation of connection with that person. So in that sacred category, these are places where you feel emotionally safe no matter what. We don't have to hide feelings. We don't have to put a mask on, and you don't have to earn your place here. You're held in full presence without any performance. So I'm going to give you some examples of characteristics that you can use yourself, or maybe it gets your wheels spinning, of what someone would need to have in order for you to feel unconditionally loved and safe. Always emotionally available, unconditionally loving, loyal, safe, non-judgmental. The list goes on and on. Now, if it was me, I would put never leaves me. Again, that right there is going to exclude a human being. But in order to feel really 100% loved and safe, I don't know, rejection and abandonment and saying goodbye kind of sucks. Not the best part of this gig here. So I would like that someone never left me, and that's not a realistic expectation for a human being. So when you are asking yourself these questions, it's not really about like, what should I say or what makes sense? It's just what's true for you. So keep in mind that in this category, reciprocity is energetic. You bring your full, unedited self, and the space within that relationship just simply holds you. Now, sometimes this category is easy to put people into. Like maybe sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I'm putting God and my dog, or just God. Sometimes people don't have anybody in this category, and that's okay too. Remember, I'm going to keep saying this. This system is meant to put your relationships into a place of reality very quickly. It's a starting point. It's a baseline. You can improve your relationships, even if you've been repeating the same patterns for decades. There is help out there, and there is the right help out there. So if you don't have anyone in this category, that's okay. But I'd still like to get you to get curious on what type of characteristics something or someone would need to have in order for you to feel unconditionally loved and safe. Now, I remember a client specifically that found her sacred relationship was nature, and taking daily walks outside in nature offered her a sense of belonging calm, and healing that she could not find in her human relationships. So nothing about this is right or wrong. It's just true or not true. And it's completely individualized to you. What I write as the characteristics in this category might not be something that you write. So I would like you guys to get curious and think about a couple questions before you write out those characteristics. Who or what in your life feels like an emotional sanctuary? And where do you feel completely safe to be exactly who you are? And remember, if you don't, that's okay. This is the starting point. We're just owning it. And again, I'll repeat it every single episode. If this feels destabilizing, if it feels like it's inspiring you to figure out what's going on in your relationships and why maybe you don't have any place where you feel completely safe, it's a great starting point to contact a professional, maybe a therapist, maybe a coach. But you are not stuck here and you are not a victim to this. We are just looking at the things, and there's a saying in this work, sometimes things get worse before they get better. And the reason that that's true is because when we start looking at things, we can't unsee them. When we start knowing things, we can't unknow them. And when we start dismantling the things that we've been denying or have been helping us manage our feelings, maybe in ways that are more maladaptive, we start to feel our feelings, and it can feel a little worse before it gets better. So please know that if any of this feels really activating, you do not have to do this alone. And in fact, I highly, highly, highly invite you to work with someone if any of this feels activating or impacts you significantly. So let's go to the trust category. And the trust category is just that. It is a relationship that is rooted in trust. So these are for the emotionally reliable people in your life. These are mutual, safe, human relationships built on consistency and accountability. So some good examples of who could go in this category, maybe a partner who you feel safe with, you can trust and honors your boundaries. A friend who listens and shows up when it matters. A family member who is consistent, kind, and emotionally mature. Now, also, you might not have anyone in this category. And I'll let you guys know that when I did a similar exercise early on in my work, I didn't have anyone in my trust category. I did have my dog and God in the sacred category. But when I filled out 20 people, none of them were in trust. And I remember thinking, oh, cool. My life kind of sucks right now and I have no friends. I'm so glad I did this. But what really happened was I was able to finally look at my relationships from a place of reality. And there were a few things that were keeping people out of that category for me. One was I was trusting the wrong people, that I had the wrong expectations on people. And I had people who probably fit in the shared interest category that I was trying to shove in the trust category. And if I say that and you cringe a little bit, you might resonate a little bit with that. I was trying to make them fit somewhere that they didn't. And then fueling a story that I couldn't trust people. The other part had a lot more to do with me. Vulnerability was not a safe place for me. So I was showing up to a lot of my relationships, hiding a lot of parts of me. And so I couldn't put people in the trust category because I wasn't letting anyone in. I'd be the best person to listen about your life and probably not say much about mine. And that's because I didn't know how to manage rejection and judgment and some of the things that I was struggling with. So this work is not about blame, not at all. It's about clarity. So even though there was an initial sting when I didn't have anyone in that category, I want you to know that today I have a few people in that category, and having just even a few people in that category is such amazing growth and health for me. And I'm perfectly okay with just having a few people in that category. But I'm happy to say that I'm one of those people. I'm so much more in my trust category now than I ever have been. And that's kind of the ultimate goal here, is not only that we're discerning around where we're putting people we're in relationship with, but where do you go? The ultimate goal of this work is that you go into that trust category more often than not. And I want you to know that this happens. I believe that the universe always knows what it's doing. And sometimes it will kind of clear out that category. Like maybe the people that we thought went in there no longer fit based off like the lens we're looking through now. Or maybe we just don't have anyone in there. And I believe that sometimes the universe has us detach to healthily reattach, meaning that we kind of have to pull back from some of our relationships to come back into relationship with ourselves, like learn how to have a trusting relationship with ourselves. So then we can start letting the right people in, that we can trust ourselves to be able to trust other people. And that was my experience in this work. So I just wanted to say as a disclaimer, if you do not have anyone in here, it's okay. Remember, this is a starting point. I'm not here to like burst the bubble of denial in your life, but I do believe that reality will find us some way, somehow. Like I said before in a previous episode, like it keeps knocking. That lesson will keep knocking till you learn it. So like always, I think if you are here today listening, there's a reason. And that reason is that it's time to look at your relationships from a place of reality and find a way to be empowered and safe in your relationships. So here's a few examples of some characteristics that someone might need to have in order for you to trust them. Safety. They need to be safe and emotionally available, accountable, willing to repair, kind, compassionate, honest, consistent. I think consistency is the main ingredient of trust. Again, not 100% consistent in this category because we're human, but most of the time consistent. Now, this part of the work where we think about the characteristics is really where you can individualize your work. For me, when I filled this out a long time ago, I went, oh, you know what? I think someone would need to have a dark sense of humor to be in my trust category. And I know that can sound really weird, but I do have a dark sense of humor at times. And I think that it's been a coping mechanism for me. Like sometimes I need to crack a joke at times where it feels dark or painful or sad. And I remember that there's been times in my life where maybe I lightened something up and people were like, oh my gosh, like what the? And I ended up feeling like I was too much. Now, of course, I need to be aware of how my humor impacts the people around me. But when I'm in a close relationship with you, I don't want to feel like I'm too much. And I can own what's true for me, whether it's true for someone else or not. So I owned, like, I need someone to have kind of a wicked or dark sense of humor so that when I crack a joke, when something bad has happened to me, they don't shame me about it. They don't think I'm too much. I can be fully myself. So those are some examples. I think accountability is huge. And if you're not realizing in the sacred category and the trust category, these characteristics can be similar. In fact, some of them might be very similar. And that's okay. Like, it's your world. We're just living in them. No rules. You get to set this. This is just to get you curious. The difference is, remember that the sacred category has that unconditional component. It has that 100% of the time. So we can use words like always, never. In that trust category, we're putting human beings in. This is where intimacy happens in our human relationships, which means conflict's going to happen. Okay, it's how the conflict is managed and repaired that determines whether it's safe or not safe or healthy or unhealthy. So if you have some similar characteristics, that's okay. Put down whatever is true for you. There's truly no right or wrong in this work. So in the trust category, this category is deeply reciprocal. You get to be emotionally open here. but what you give should be matched over time. Okay. Like, as someone who has been a chronic overfunctioner in my relationships, I don't overfunction with the relationships that are in the trust category. What I give, I get back. What I expect, I also give. And those relationships hit different when you know, not like from a tit for tat type of perspective, but you know that the love, the energy, the effort you've put in is reciprocated in the relationship. So it is healthy to have expectations, realistic expectations in these categories, but specifically in the trust category with human relationships, it's okay to expect honesty in your relationships, respect, and follow through. And it's okay to expect that conflict can be handled with care. Like, I think it's fair for every single person listening to write down fights fair in the characteristics of someone that would be in the trust category. And let me tell you, if a mirror just went up when I said that and you go, but I don't fight fair. Okay. Well, if we want to get some of these things, we got to be able to give them too. And again, just like with anything, you don't have to do it on your own. I help people manage conflict every dang day, Monday through Friday. Okay. And I'm not the only one doing this work. So if you go, oh gosh, but how? This is a great time to find a place of support that can teach you some new tools. So I gave an example in the last episode of a friend that I was really trying to shove in the trust category with my expectations that she would be consistent. But the data that I have on her was that she was inconsistent. And I'm not the only person that's experienced that. I've had so many clients realize that they may have been giving trust level access to someone who never really followed through, took responsibility, handled conflict in a healthy way. Maybe they're trying to put someone in trust that they feel really judged by, or this person gives them a lot of unsolicited advice, which I love the saying unsolicited advice is just criticism, because I don't know, feels that way to me. And that doesn't feel safe for me. And that doesn't feel trustworthy. So when these clients have shifted the person into a more accurate category, which most often might be that shared interest category, which we're going to dive into in the next episode, their sense of peace and emotional clarity returns. Now, again, sometimes this can feel a little messy. And when I talked about the kind of basics of boundaries, I mentioned that we have to be able to learn how to manage discomfort and awkwardness. Like, sometimes when we have someone that we've been trying to fit in the trust category, and then we realize, wow, you know what? They don't belong there. I'm giving them too much information or too much access to my life. It can feel a little wonky, can feel a little uncomfortable, but breathe, slow down. Watch the duration of time that you're spending with that person. Maybe you need to take it from a 3-hour dinner to an hour coffee or a FaceTime. But remember, the umbrella of this work is do it different. And as long as you have the courage to do it different, we're going to be good. We can do anything in this work. Okay. So I want you to think about in this category, who in your life consistently aligns their actions with their words. Now, remember, I've talked about before, we can say no, we can change our mind. So I'm not talking about from a place of rigidity that like they never, cancel plans with you or need to take care of themselves. But again, that reciprocity is honored, that both of you guys can take care of yourselves, and that that when push comes to shove, this person's going to show up for you. And I want you to think about who earns your trust, not just through intentions or what you hope, but through their actions and their follow through. So let's make this really clear. Both the sacred and trust categories are about emotional safety. Both allow for vulnerability within the relationship. You're safe enough to be vulnerable. But the sacred category is unconditional, while the trust category is earned through behavior or data. The sacred category is a spiritual sanctuary, and trust is a human partnership where intimacy and vulnerability is safe. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to sit down. I know I gave you this invitation last time, but why not dig in a little bit more? And I'd like you to make a list of characteristics for the sacred and the trust category. Okay. So that means, what characteristics would someone or something need to have in order for you to feel unconditionally loved and safe? That would be for the sacred category. I gave you some examples in this. It's okay if you come up with one or two, but listen, our job is to keep us safe from this point forward and to keep ourselves emotionally safe. So feel free to write down whatever feels true for you. Then we're going to move to the trust category. And I want you to think about, what characteristics would someone need to have in order for me to trust them? Write down whatever feels true. Again, even if it's just a starting point and you put one or two things down. At this point, my list is relatively longer than it was when I first did this exercise because I know myself a lot more. And just as a little hack that will jump ahead, when you write out those characteristics for the trust category, you can apply them to yourselves. It's a roadmap to go, hey, this is what I need in order to feel safe and trust. So apply it to your own relationship with you. And I would strongly suggest that before you start putting people or things in this category, that you write out the characteristics, because those characteristics are going to serve as a guide for where you place people. Not on history, not on potential, not on hope, on data, and data that is aligned with your truth. So those questions, what characteristics would someone need to have in order for me to feel unconditionally loved and safe and trust someone, are probably two of the hardest questions that I ask in my coaching relationship with clients. Because none of us have really slowed down enough to really ask ourselves, what do we need in order to feel 100% safe and to be able to trust someone? Like if I went out with a camera and a microphone and asked a crowd of people, hey, what does safe mean to you? I mean, most likely people are going to say, I don't know, I just know. But we've really never sat down and wrote out what characteristics someone would need to have. So I'd like for you to do that. And then those characteristics are going to serve as a vetting process for where people go. So when I take people through this exercise, and they go, okay, Susie goes in trust, I say, okay, let me read the characteristics that you listed out. We're not rounding up, because essentially this is what you told me you need in order to trust or feel unconditionally loved and safe. So if for some reason this person doesn't have one of these characteristics, my strong suggestion is that we put them in one category down, be a little bit more discerning with our boundaries, and get more data over time. So if we said, okay, Susie, is she honest? Yes. Is she emotionally available? Yes. Is she non-judgmental? No. I feel really judged when I'm around her. That's when we go, and we pump the brakes and we go, okay, well, if judgment is a wound, if judgment is an allergy, then that's going to prohibit your nervous system from truly feeling safe. And we're not here to do kind of safe, kind of trust. We're here to make it clear. So let your characteristics serve as a guide for where you place people. And we do not round up. That means that someone would need to have all of those characteristics. And it's not uncommon in this work that I'll have people adjust their characteristics and not put certain things down because it would exclude someone in their life they really want to be in that category. And I'm just telling you, we're not here to lie to ourselves anymore. Like, don't invest your time even listening to this podcast if we're just going to lie to ourselves. I'm not saying you have to jump in head first to the deep end of the reality pool, but let's get in on the kiddie end, the shallow end, and start wading ourselves out. because reality is ultimately what's going to set us free. The truth is what's going to set us free. And if I haven't said it before on this podcast, I'm very aware that I actually don't heal anybody. The truth heals people. I just throw a bunch of stuff at you that might align with your truth. Some of it might not, but if it does, that's a wake-up call. So I know that it's hard when we go, man, I really wanted my brother to be in the trust category, but he's really judgmental, or his communication is really inconsistent, and it makes me feel like he's mad at me all the time and I never know where I stand. It's not safe and it's not trustworthy. And it doesn't mean that we're nailing the coffin shut on that relationship. It means that we might need to have a conversation. We might need to, invite this person to bring more health into the relationship. All of that is possible. Okay. Or we might need to grieve. And maybe this person has limitations and we can't be as close as we would like. And it's okay to grieve that. So sometimes there's definitely grief in realizing someone you love doesn't fit in a category. But usually after the grief comes relief, because you no longer have to carry the weight of unrealistic expectations that truly just burn your own behind. There is a deep power in protecting your inner space and getting honest about who's earned access to your most vulnerable self and parts and who hasn't. This clarity is not about labeling people. And remember, this is an internal system. I highly suggest you don't go out into your relationships and say, you are now in shared interest and you're in trust, but you're not. This is for your own inner knowing and your own internal compass. It's about honoring your nervous system, your energy, and your truth. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode today. In the next episode, we're going to dive in a little deeper into the shared interest category, which I believe can be the most confusing category because it's where the most amount of people go. It's also what I call the codependency buster category because there's some principles that if we follow, we just carry a little bit more realistic sense of responsibility and we can align our expectations with the data that we have on people. And not to say that you won't carry unrealistic expectations in your relationship, but this process is going to help a whole lot. So until then, protect what's sacred, trust what's earned, and stay rooted in what's real. I can't wait to dive even more into the boundary pyramid. Please know that if you have any questions or you need any support, you can reach out to me via email or you can direct message me on social media. Right now, this week, I am working on creating a course just on this boundary pyramid. So if you have questions, hold tight. I will be coming out with that soon and have some opportunities for you guys to have some access to me in a group setting where you could ask specific questions. So take care of yourself. I'll see you next week where we're going to talk about that sacred category. Thanks for tuning in. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.